he'd call me one day and he said, I feel terrible, I think I have this and that. Next day he was as chipper and as optimistic. So I never knew where, if it was just a fit of the blues and sort of depression that made him feel ill all over. Then next day something happened that made him feel good.
Okay. So he could become very depressed.
Oh
It's
yes.
clear there were moments, there was periods.
And over the smallest things. The famous scoop there, ice cream scoop, really threw him for a twist there. He was very depressed that Alfonso would steal. Say, why would he steal? You have valuable things. Why would he take an ice cream scoop? I mean, just stop and think that. Oh, I'm sure because I know where I put it. And he put it in the drawer with the sheets. He'd forgotten about it.
Absent-minded, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. And Milton Rosenbaum said that he was in McLean Hospital as well.
Where?
McLean Hospital. Some sort of breakdown
What,
in Massachusetts.
Oh yeah, well that's when I never was convinced it was a breakdown, but it was maybe close to it. That's when he asked me to come. When I told you I went from Madison, Wisconsin, I drove to Boston. And when he had a knockdown, drag-out fight with Marjorie, and he was in a very depressed state of mind. But I don't know enough about it, but it's an actual breakdown.
Okay.
And the fact is that I drove almost night and day to get this because he sounded so desperate. And when I arrived, I really was, of course, Marjorie was in the house that they had. And I said, well, where's my brother? And she said, well, I don't know, you have to go to university and find out. So I went to try to find out where I could locate him. And they finally discovered where he was. He was playing tennis.
Presumably beautifully dressed.
Yes, everything perfect. But I really was upset. I thought all of this, I drove myself crazy getting there. And here he is playing tennis. I thought I'd see him prostrate on a bed and in a terrible state. No, he was having a ball playing tennis.
He would have realized that the physical exercise would have actually been psychologically beneficial.
Probably, yeah.
So it was a
He was
therapeutic.
having a good game of tennis. And I took a very dim view of the whole thing because I thought, here I drove night and day to get here fast, and he's playing tennis.
Marjorie was a laboratory technician, her occupation, her profession.
I think she was when he met her.
Yeah.
But then in Boston she didn't work. She was housebound.
Did you know
They were very social. They had parties. Because the day I arrived, when I went to her home, where John and she lived, there were, I can't tell you how, maybe 30 glasses for highballs and things that hadn't been washed yet from the party, from either the night or the night before that. I don't know when they had a knockdown, drag-out party. And he had a big polar bear skin in front of the fireplace, where he used to like to lie down on the polar bear near the fire.
Okay. They had a nice apartment.
Yeah, beautiful.
Okay. Sorry, knockdown, drag out means?
Going the full gamut. When you do a knockdown, drag out means really a bash.
Right, okay. Okay. You know what happened to her later?
No, the last time I saw her was when I told you I invited her to Annapolis to an officer's dance.
Okay.
And then, I think then she went to my sister in Washington for a while. And I lost. She never kept up with me, and I didn't with her.
No.
There's no reason to really. I mean, I didn't.
No. I realized that. I realized that.
No, we barely knew each other really.
Of course. It's some ways.
John took her to Mexico, but I wasn't there to meet my parents.
Okay.
And my mother was very, very much like John in many respects because Marjorie noticed my mother's ring. So I love that ruby and diamond ring you have. So she took it off and gave it to her. And I said, oh, my mother, where's your famous diamond and ruby ring? Oh, I gave it to Marjorie. She never returned it. She thought maybe it's just as they broke up that she would,
Yes, of course.
you know, I don't want this anymore.
Okay.
She maybe put it in the pawn shop. I mean, she probably needed money because it was all, that whole era was very stormy and Sturm und Drang.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah. I mean,
And I couldn't figure, I mean, of course, I was much less aware of things than I am now, but I mean, I wasn't a child, but I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't, like John calls me from Massachusetts to Wisconsin. Could you come in a hurry? Well, I thought something really bad was happening. And he thought it was as he was breaking up with Marjorie and having a bit of a breakdown or something.
were you surprised when he volunteered for the Air Force?
No.
No.
No, because it gave him, for one thing, John loved to disguise himself. Gave him a chance to wear a uniform and to look like an officer in the war. Whether he even saw any part of the war, it wouldn't matter, but he was dressed for it. As a matter of fact, I was looking through some things the other day here that I was going to throw. I brought so much stuff that I don't need. Among them, Russian mujik shirts that John ordered for himself, you know, with a collar and with a tie, the cord, silk cord. There are 2 or 3 of them there. As a matter of fact, I took John to the Russian tea room in New York, which was one of the landmarks in those days. And all the waiters were Russians, and they had these Russian shirts. He was fascinated by them. So we asked the waiters where they got them, and they gave us the address where we could order them. And of course, John would order one, he'd always have half a dozen or a dozen. And I still have them there. Like I have his opera hat. That was a disguise too.
But I mean, joining the Air Force, I mean, that was, I mean, there was, let's say, it was such a devastating emergency in Europe, and I mean, the world was in danger, and it was a very significant. It was very. I mean, the work he was doing scientifically was. I mean, it was absolutely significant.
I know, but again, it's because he didn't feel it was right what they were doing, what Hitler and the Germans were doing with all the Jewish, putting them in camps and all. And I think that stimulated him a great deal. I mean, he felt something has to be done. What little bit I can do, I'll do it. And he had no fear he had no concept of danger when his mind was made up, this needs to be done. He'd give his life for it. Just like he did the March to Selma. He felt that blacks had been mistreated and didn't have a chance to make a life. And he was going to fight for them no matter what. And he had those welts on his back where they beat him. You know, they could have killed him because the police in those days were frightful. I mean, all the police dogs they had and everything else, they could have destroyed him. But that didn't bother you. He didn't.
Were your parents concerned when you joined the forces?
Oh, yes. But then there were 3 of us. My youngest brother, who's died already.
Yes.
He was in the Navy. I was in the Navy. And as a matter of fact, my sister-in-law has, well, when my brother Phil was living, they put the 3 of us who were in the war in uniform, the official photographs of the Navy or that, framed on the wall of where they sit in the evening, watch television.
Oh, right.
And the butler's little son was about 8 years old. Became very fond of my sister-in-law. After my brother died, he used to amuse her. I mean, she was very broken up by my brother Phil's death. And she took this little David as almost like a little son of hers. And one day he came to tell her in the same room. He said, we're going to my father's little village. We're going to be away for a weekend. And my sister-in-law said, oh no, who's going to look after me? He says, you've got 3 policemen there.
Oh, that's nice.
And it sounds even funny in Spanish because policía is about the lowest thing you can be in Mexico. Miserable outfits and the dregs of humanity becomes a policeman.
Okay.
He had a big discussion with one of the psychiatric meetings in New York. I mean, with I read papers, and I think it was about schizophrenia. I'm not sure. It was mental something. And I know John's theory was that something changes in your blood that causes this. Where the psychiatry of the times thought that the mind changed the blood. In other words, he said, for example, if you're frightened, a lot of blood changes go on in you because of your secretion of things. Now, that can affect your mind. But he didn't think that the mind was the problem first. It was the blood, the circulation, that caused the disorder.
It's extremely interesting because it's a physiology of the emotions.
Yes, exactly.
And very precisely measured. And you have to be a very acute observer. You also have to be very good at the instrumentation. It's very interesting, significant work. So,
And as I say, whatever he undertook, he always did it full force. I mean, never halfway or I'd just work out a little bit, give himself entirely to it and really work and think and live with it. I regret sometimes that we didn't, that he didn't communicate more with me what he was doing in the scientific world or in the whatever he was engaged in. Usually it was his own emotions that he wanted to spill on me, or whatever problems he was having, or whatever social context, whatever. He listened to me and I'd give him the best advice I could. That was from the world where we live and not in some cloud up there. And always hoping for the best for him. I mean, as I've told him many times, that I'm telling you this not to hurt you, not to destroy your relationship, but you're asking me for my advice. This is the way I see it, and these are the reasons I see it that way.
And your sister Margaret also supported and gave advice for him?
She, I think she tried a bit, but John, they never could really get very close.
Did you meet Natasha Spender, lady? Because she came to New York. What?
She was a pianist.
Yes.
Yes. But she was in love with John. I mean, she was the one. And John liked her, I think, but she really was very much in love with him. But she was still married to Stephen. I mean, John certainly would not have had anything to do with it, I know that.
But she clearly visited him repeatally over many years. Yeah.
And he used to complain to me about it. He said, Natasha, what do I do? I said, you asked for it, so you'll have to find out how you get rid of it now.
Okay.
But she'd come and stay in his apartment for good lengths of time.
I see, she would stay. Okay.
Yeah. And then he would justify, oh, she's a good pianist. I said, well, that's good. Why don't you buy her a piano?
All right.
Is this too hard to...
No, it's fine, it's fine. I'm just slow drinking. Okay.
Yeah, very black coffee.
It's very good.
I was very fond of the Sitwells.
Yeah. He visited them?
They visited him. I never saw them, but...
in the States?
Yes, because I remember one remark John made about Edith Sitwell. They had apparently just been in Cuba, and Edith said, and all that sandpaper music, because it sounded like they were rubbing sandpaper.
Okay.
And that stuck to me, the sandpaper music of the Cubans.
So he would have just known them as socially or as art, or did he actually?
I think socially. Well, I don't know really, because I know that I must have sent you the inscribed books.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
and I remember him saying the Sitwells are here with me. So I don't know if they were staying with him in his apartment. He had a large apartment.
I mean, I know the music facade very well.
Yeah.
That's nice.
But as I say, in many respects, John was very secretive with most of the people. The ones that he discussed with me that I knew were the ones that were giving him problems. When he didn't have, I mean, Natasha gave him problems, but he could handle them. When he felt cornered or threatened, then I'd know them. I mean, those that he liked and that they got along well. But except Auden, I knew. But all the rest, no. Sometimes he would mention somebody, but I never knew them. I mean, some important person that he's just been with. I've forgotten whether he was very admired Jacques Maritain a lot. But I don't know if did Maritain go to New York? I think he did. He had Princeton University or something.
I suppose one question that I have is whether John only knew Maritain when he was at Eau Vive, because Maritain used to lecture every year at Eau Vive.
Oh yeah, well then he must have known him there.
Or whether, but he was also in Toronto.
Oh.
So that, and it was in 1944 when your brother converted to Roman Catholicism.
Yes.
That was.
Was it 44 when he converted?
Yes, definitely, because there's a letter from someone called Phelan, who says that I've supervised the conversion. He's a very admirable person. And he writes this in 46 when your brother doesn't want to be demobilized from the services,
yes.
and to be sent back. He feels that it should remain in Europe, but he says it's 40, so it's definitely 44.
Well, the priest that converted him or did whatever ceremony they have to do wrote a very nice letter to my mother, but I don't know what happened to that.
So it was the priest that wrote.
Yes. I remember that she was moved by it, and a very beautiful letter.
Do you have any idea? I mean, I can say I can see that your brother had very positive contacts with Roman Catholic intellectuals before then.
Oh yes.
But
what was
44? What was it that
he claimed that when my sister that died when she was in a 10 or maybe 10 years old with the Spanish flu, he claimed that changed his life and that he from then on was trying to find something. He apparently was very devoted to her, and it made a very deep impression on him. And he said that's the only religion that had helped him in the Catholic. Whatever reasons he did say, was the only religion that really helped me with this wound was the Catholic.
I mean, in one sense it's very different to Protestantism because you don't have this sense of predestination. The Catholic is much more it's the individuals.
Oh yeah.
I can say there's a free will of the individual to make.
That's right. Same as Albert Leo, leave it as free will. And John wasn't an evangelist or anything of the kind, but he often told me that I should go to church with him and all this. I would go with him, but it doesn't do anything for me really. And I told him so. I said I'd be happy to be your companion, but it really doesn't move me. And that's when I used to tell him, read Unamuno's Tragic Sense of Life, where your mind wants something, but your spirit wants something else. I mean, emotionally you may be convinced that the Catholic, but if you start using your mind, then you start questioning things. And John would say, you have to take it on faith, he told me. I said, well, I don't have that faith. You know, if you do, and God bless you, if you have that strong faith that you can believe all they tell you and not question it. That's it. And it can't be intellectualized, or you can't analyze it mentally. You have to take it as faith. The virgin birth and all that is a beautiful idea, but I can't. It doesn't sit with me.
I mean, I can say some of these theological issues, like the theology of the Incarnation, and also the Virgin Mary
and the resurrection, and you have to take it on faith, but I just can't.
It's all terribly significant.
It is. It's wonderful if you can, if you have that faith, that's the way it was.
Do you ever hear your brother being critical of the church?
Critical of practitioner, of priests. And, oh yeah, not the church, though the mother church was infallible.
No, but individual priests.
Oh yeah.
In what way?
Well, he says some of them were just blabbering when they didn't know what they were saying, and they were just like parrots, just sort of giving the sermon, and they memorized it, but no real thought, or they weren't conveying anything to they're just blabbering, reading their sermon. He liked the Dominicans because he said they were the best preachers.
Also very academic.
Yeah, and he also liked the Loyola, what do you call them?
The Jesuits.
The Jesuits, because they were so strict in their attitude toward the church. It was so rigid. He believed in that way it should be. And he was, I think, also, without his even being aware, the fact that San Ignacio was a Spaniard, the one that founded the order, I think subconsciously it did attract John.
I see. Okay.
Because although his Spanish was the weakest of all, he admired Spain a lot, admired the Spanish, like Quixote he loved Don Quixote.
Okay.
And he loved Spanish painting, Velázquez and all that.
And what did he say about Franco?
Oh no, Franco, no, he was against anything that was going to oppress or was going to impose their will. I mean, if it came naturally, fine, but just for someone to say, this is it, he wouldn't go for it.
In the Spanish Civil War? And the Spanish Civil War, do you remember anything that your brother...
Yeah, well, he criticized both sides. The International Brigade, he thought, was not what it should be. And Franco was too much of a despot and, I mean, an ignorant man, really. A good military technician and all that, but an ignorant and violent, strong man. Cruel, that's what he said. Yeah. And then I used to mention a lot about, because I've always kept up with my Spanish roots, and I read in Spanish all the time, and I know Spanish music and literature, painting, whatever. And I used to stimulate him in that, and all of a sudden he got a streak of being passionate of flamenco music. As a matter of fact, I have his flamenco records, because he went and bought every flamenco record you could buy.
Okay.
And then he would pick up the phone and say, oh, have you ever heard of Pastora Pavon? Oh, yes. Oh, isn't she great? And he was all excited about this flamenco singer.
But, in flamenco there's a sort of trance, isn't there?
Yeah, well, the flamenco is the gypsy Spanish, Moorish.
Yeah.
Mixture of Moorish and Spanish. Yeah. And they get the duende, they get the ghost, and they're carried away by it.
I could see that psychological state would be that he'd be interested in.
Oh, yes. And if they don't have the duende, they can't perform. I mean, there was a Spanish dancer, Carmen Amaya, I don't know if you've heard of her, but she was the greatest exponent of flamenco dancing. She was a real flamenco. And she looked like a gypsy, dark-skinned. And when she said, if I don't have the duende, it's useless. I perform, but I can't. I don't say anything. She was funny because I had lunch with her once in a restaurant in New York. I used to go to have my meals in Spanish, like a little bistro. And the owner, Vicente Gomez, was a guitarist. And while we were eating, he played the guitar. And she, when she was performing in New York, had all her meals there. And Vicente said, would you like to meet Carmen now? I said, of course. So he took me over to a table, and we sat and talked, had dinner together. And I said, Carmen, where do you consider you have your best audience? Where do you? Because she had tremendous appeal. And she stopped for a minute. She said, you know, I'm going to tell you where my best audience is, in London. And in London, they're all English. Like, it's a discovery for me to know that in London, and they're all English there. I mean, like, even they.
Well, of course, it could have been, I can say,
no, because
Spanish workers. They could have been they could have been excellent.
Yeah, but she's so Spanish and so flamenco that she didn't think maybe the English wouldn't know what she was doing. And she said, "That's my best audience. You know, they're all English there." Because we were talking, I said, wouldn't it be better if the Crees had were able to marry and have a normal life? And he said, no, because then if a person needed them, maybe the priest's wife would be sick or have some excuse. This way they can devote their whole life to their flock at any time. But he says they don't do it. That bothered him.
But he never had a vocation to be a priest.
No. No, John, as we know, you know, he liked to be ascetic maybe in those retreats where he went for maybe 2 weeks. But then he also liked his Jaguar and he liked his fine clothes and Scotch and soda and the opera. And that just wouldn't sit well with a priest.
Did he mention Thomas Merton at all?
Yeah, he asked me to read him. What was the thing? Something of Silo, the waters of Silo or something. But he felt that he didn't think that Merton was really too honest, too a bit of a show. He wasn't convinced that it was really basically real. It was a bit of a pose. And I used to sometimes tell John, I said, you pose a lot, John, don't you can't throw stones. He said, no, but not on things that really matter. So that shut me up. He hated anybody that put on airs or pretended to be what they weren't. I say he hated, but he brushed them off.
That sort of arrogance.
Yeah. It would upset him really that somebody was trying to be something they weren't. I think you probably will find that when you come to the conclusion of his life, after we've done all this going over the past, that he was a fascinating and a very conflictive in his, full of conflicts, anguishes, and desperately looking for a better world. You know, he thought he could add his grain of salt to making it better. As I told him many times, John, it's bigger than you or me or anybody. We can't change maybe people. And he told me once, he said, you know, nobody's worse off for having known us.
It's true. No, I mean, that's too modest.
No, but I said, we can't change anything. We can't change the way people are. I said, yes, we can. I was much more doubtful than he was. I mean, I don't have that much faith in changing. Plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. Look at the war we're in now in Iraq and the mess we're making of the world in general. I mean, I think John would really been ill, physically ill if he had lived through this.
I agree.
He'd go to Washington and spiel his mind off to Bush or to somebody. He'd get involved and fight somebody, even if it was just shadow boxing.
Okay. You'd always go to the top.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good.
And I feel the same way. I mean, what right do we have to try to impose our way of life into the Middle East? Or, I mean, they have their own. I mean, the way Bush talks, you think that we were going to open a world of light and love, and it's not so. They have their own work. And say the women take their scarves off or don't hide. They've done it all centuries and they like it, let them be. Who are we to say they should wear mini skirts or, you know?
No, it's a lot to do with, let's say, respect for other cultures.
Exactly. And they've been happy with them and for centuries. Leave them alone. There again, then the culture doesn't, the question is whatever they have that we can grab. Petroleum or whatever is marketable.
Well, he thought, but your brother thought that he could really change Germany and that Germany needed it. There was a need for the education.
And he was convinced that it was possible. And no matter how I tried to tell him it was, yes, it was. He never wavered. But then that got him also into states of depression because he felt so frustrated and disappointed when things didn't work the way he liked.
True.
And I'm not sure, but I think he was instrumental in that group in New York that was called Victims of Man-Made Disasters, wasn't he?
Yes, absolutely.
I thought
leading light.
Yeah.
Very important because there was an injustice.
Exactly.
Which was continuing, and to do with Nazi psychiatry and Nazi medicine, which was, he felt, the same people who'd perpetrated the abuses were now blocking compensation, and so that he spoke very eloquently.
Oh yes. In some of his papers where he mentions the experience of how these people have been damaged for life emotionally, and those scars will never disappear.
Absolutely right.
There's one, I think I sent you the
yes, did.
Where he speaks of that. And at the end he says, if you lost trust, you've lost everything.
And I think that's very important, that value of trust.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, your brother uses these concepts, but they have a very sophisticated...
Yeah, and all these people that survived the horrible things of Belsen and Auschwitz and all, they have, no matter what you do, they've lost trust in humanity, in human beings. And as John says, once you've lost trust, you've lost everything. I mean, and he tried to, at work with that group of the man-made disasters, things he'd go to meetings and they would talk to victims, and I think he felt that you could soothe the pain a little bit and have them feel a little bit supported by people like John and others who were giving themselves to help others. But he said the scars of the traumatic experiences will never disappear. They'll carry those till the day they die. As a matter of fact, we were having a bite to eat in some little bistro in New York one time, and a nice young, not young, but middle-aged waitress, I would say, very pleasant, was waiting on us. And John said, "Did you see her hand?" I said, "No, why?" He said, "Next time she comes and puts something on the table, look at her hand." She had that number tattooed. He said, "She's a victim. She was one of the people that got out." I noticed, but he saw it. He said, look at the number on her hand.
When he died, there were these Dura's praying hands. Because there was a letter and you said, well, the best way to remember your brother would be this image of Dura with the praying hands.
That's right.
I mean, was there anything else in the symbolism of the hands that you felt was...
No, I think it's the attitude of prayer and of peace and of all the things that John liked in his religion. The two hands, like in reverence and humility and brotherhood.
And he had that picture, did he?
Oh yes, it was a lithograph. I don't know what happened. It wasn't worth any, but it was a famous hands in prayer.
No, I mean, I think the symbolism is extraordinarily interesting because there's also the healing hands of the physicians.
That's right, exactly.
And the need to have physical contact with the...
As a matter of fact, not long before he died, he was in Mexico for I don't know what reason, probably visited the family. But he went to a art exhibit of Orozco, the Mexican muralist painter. It was the opening of the show, I think, and they were also selling lithographs. And John bought me a lithograph of Orozco at that show and brought it back to New York with him. And it was hands again, going like this. I can show it to you. And there's a big Mexican, there's Orozco and Diego Rivera. And Siqueiros, there were three big muralists. And I always liked Orozco because I met him at one of his party, a reception, and I went up to speak to him and I said, "Maestro, I'm interested in your opinion of the Mexican muralist movement." I mean, he was one of the big ones. "I'd like to know what your impression is because they've been written up so much. what do you really think of them? And he looked at me and says, you know, I'll be honest with you, I know nothing about that. All I do is paint. Isn't that wonderful?
I mean, this is the murals at the Rockefeller Center, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. No, those are Rivera. The other one. No, the Orozco, most of his work is in Guadalajara, the city in the middle of Mexico. Beautiful work. In an orphanage. And impressive, enormous expansion of wall painted by him. Time, but then when I moved so many times, I don't know what happened to it. And I may have it, they're all still packed in boxes there.
Do you think it dated from his time in Nuremberg, or?
And I don't know.
It's an interesting symbol to.
Oh yes.
Harks back, because he was in Nuremberg as well. Duras.
No, it is. It's very symbolic of the whole thing. And what amazed me sometimes with John, that he was so pro the Mexican revolutionaries. I mean, when they actually put us out on the street, but he felt that they were doing it for the people. The peasants had been so mistreated, so downtrodden, that people like Pancho Villa and Zapata were fighting to help their people get a better deal.
So he said this in the 1920s?
Who, John? Always. He always felt, I mean, that's one thing that none of us could really go along with, because thanks to them we lost everything. But that didn't matter to him. He said, no, the people were so downtrodden. He remembered what they used to pay them, 7 cents a day from dawn to dusk.
With a great sense of social justice. But he was never a socialist, or was he?
I don't think he ever was anything that you could pigeonhole.
Yeah.
He was always like Quixote. Quixote was a single man doing what he thought was right, fighting windmills and all that, but never belonged to any group, or on the contrary, he didn't like that. He wanted to be alone, let me be. And I remember John said, it doesn't matter what you call them. He said all the isms, communism, fascism, socialism. He said, that doesn't mean a thing, it's what you do.
Yeah. But I mean, in the 30s or the...
Oh yes, he was certainly, would be labeled as very left, but I don't think he ever belonged to any organization. Or he didn't have a card as a communist, or... No, and I told him many times, I said, John, you remind me of Manolete, the famous bullfighter that got killed in Spain. When his helpers would see that Manolete was having a problem with the bull, they'd all run out with their capes to try to divert the bull from getting Manolete. And he'd scream to them and say, "Dejarme solo, leave me alone." Even if he's near death, with the bull almost hooking him. "Dejarme solo, leave me alone. Let me handle this alone."
Okay.
I told John, you're like Manolete, leave me alone. Or socialist or anything else. I may think they way many things that they do I approve, but I'm not going to be part of the gang.
Okay. What about pacifism?
I never really, I can't think of them discussing it.
Okay. And the atomic bomb?
Well, anything that was violent and destructive he hated. I know. It could be even just one little gun, a pistol or a dagger that anything that was destructive would hurt people. He was against.
Did he ever, I mean, what about hunting? Did he ever hunt?
No. Supposedly he was on a hunting trip when he was in Stanford with the Morse boys.
That's why I asked,
Yeah, but that's very